We're back for another amazing episode of Zag Talk. Today, we're going to be joined by Stephen Hayes, VP of Autonomous Fleets and Driver Operations at Lyft. So, getting into all sorts of exciting Robotaxi topics. But before that, I'm joined by my colleague, Athena Browning. Hey, Athena.
Hi, Jonah.
A lot to talk about this week and all weeks, but we're smack dab in the middle of earnings season here in the U.S., and I suppose anywhere with corporations, it's generally Q3 earnings season. But a lot of news coming out, a lot of big numbers, Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, kind of all growing. I mean, Uber Q3 revenue up 20% year over year, both delivery and mobility up, delivery growing a little bit more. DoorDash also gross order value 25%, seems to be the magic number this time. Even little guy Lyft up 16%, and Instacart growing about 10%. So whether you're doing combined food delivery and mobility, or just one or the other, people are moving, things are moving. The numbers are looking pretty good. I don't know. It's firing on all cylinders, I suppose, to use a tired metaphor.
Growth across the board. We love to see it, especially after the shakier pandemic years. I think it's nice to see that some of these companies are finding a stable footing. Now, is this just in the US, or are we seeing this overseas as well?
Yeah, it's looking strong everywhere. So Talabat, which is the delivery in the Middle East, North Africa zones, they grew GMV by 26%, so huge numbers. Grab, which you probably know, focused in Southeast Asia, combo of mobility and delivery, kind of like an Uber for Singapore and thereabouts, up 26%. So big growth everywhere. The whole world's moving and eating and delivering, and things are shaking up. And what I thought was interesting is that, so they got all this free cash flow now, right? And what are they going to spend it on? They're going to spend it on AI and AVs. So DoorDash planning to spend hundreds of millions in new investments. Uber is reportedly buying Getir to expand to Turkey. Grab going all in on AVs, so expanding, investing into May Mobility, and Vay, which does teleoperations. So that money's going somewhere.
So the tech players, growth via AI, automation. It's very novel from them. But what about the
Yeah,
restaurants
exactly.
that are actually they're actually on these platforms? Are they seeing growth too?
Yeah, it seems like so. If the money's going somewhere, it's AI, AV investments, but it's not going to the bottom line of the restaurants. So it's been a tough quarter, whether you're making healthy food or not. So Sweet Green, big, techie salad brand, their revenue is down. Same stores cratering almost 10%. They're selling off their robotic kitchen arm, Spice. But then it's also down market. So Yum Brands is looking to offload Pizza Hut, an iconic delivery food. Papa John's is also, was going to get bought, but then that fell through because the numbers were so bad. So if you can't make money delivering pizza, that's tough out there. Consumers obviously a little strapped for cash, but they're still spending on something. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a harsh reality. You've got the platforms thriving, but kind of at the expense of the restaurants that feed them. Is that fair to say?
That could be fair to say. If consumers are hurting, what's a good way to save a couple bucks? It's a used bicycle, of course. So this one caught my eye. Upway just raised $60 million in Series C financing to accelerate their U.S. growth. So they're kind of a used bike mega retailer, just raised money from AP Moeller, Galvanize, Sequoia, a bunch of big names. And at this point, they're basically taking over the world. They're in France, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, Spain, and the U.S. 6 industrial scale refurbishment centers, 200 brands, 2,500 models. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like an ad because it's not, but they're kind of a behemoth these days. And I think for good reason, because you're buying a used bike that, works as well as a new bike, but it's about half the cost. So that's big savings.
I hear their latest funding round was pretty successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so they've now raised, I think, $130 million total. One thing that I thought was particularly interesting is that they cited the state subsidies as a kind of a tailwind boosting them in the U.S. And I'm, here in California, I'm mad because the Air Resources Board is just winding down our e-bike incentive program that was barely running. Classic case of like having a non-qualified nonprofit administer it instead of having the state do it themselves. So I'm always rallying about how we don't have any state capacity anymore, and this is a perfect example. And so the money is just being shifted over into more EV subsidies. Hooray. But not to get too dreary, the other thing I really liked about this is I think that bike subscriptions and used bikes tie in so well. So we've seen a bunch of other brands come up recently doing bike subscriptions, right? You got the Wombies, Lug and Carry, Sweet Spot, Sharpay, Freeway, Lisa Bike, Ride Panda, which just raised a bunch of money of their own. So yeah, basically making bikes a subscription, so you don't worry about maintenance. You don't worry about, oh, if I don't like this model, what do I do? They just kind of make it easy like a car lease. But what's interesting is that a lot of times, the end of, let's say, a 24-month subscription, what do you do with that used bike? Maybe the customer buys it, or maybe you sell it to Upway, and then you have this sort of reliable end of life cycle for both the subscription and for Upway. And so it's just part of this kind of positive flywheel that means more cheap bikes for everyone. So, yay.
Circular economy in action. That's the
Circular
buzzword
economy, baby. We love it.
more and more now. I mean, would you say that kind of refurb bikes are maybe a bit of a gateway into micromobility? They give people the opportunity to try out things like e-bikes without having to take on the cost burden so
I
much.
think so. Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's a used bike or a subscription bike, if you can take a more affordable sample than having to go all in on a 4K, fancy bells and whistles e-bike, it's a lot more palatable. Yeah. I'm riding a used bike. I bought it off a friend, but still didn't pay full freight.
I was about to ask you actually if you're a refurbisher yourself.
It was in good condition, fortunately, but I don't know. Speaking of riding around, you've been traveling the world, obviously. I can tell you're glowing. You have a tan. It's coming across the podcast. Where did you get that tan? Where have you been?
My lovely tan. It's a nice change from the Victorian chimney sweeper complexion that most of us in the UK have become accustomed to. I've been in Barcelona, sunny Barcelona, for the Smart City Expo World Congress. This is now the second year that I've gone, and reliably good weather each time. So I'm really quite grateful for that.
Thank you, Spain. But besides tanning, what did you learn?
Besides the tanning, which unfortunately was limited. Yeah, well, it was a pretty record-breaking year for this event, this congress. We're about just under 30,000 people from like
Wow.
150 countries. The theme was the time for cities, which, to be honest, is quite a vague theme, but I think the
I'll
idea
tell you,
is about
coming up with a theme for these things is always so hard because you got to come up with something that's like all encompassing, sounds different from last year, but isn't so different that it scares off people. So it's just like a time for cities, a city for time. Now is the era of urbanization.
Yeah, I mean,
But
you
I
probably
cut you
have
off.
more experience than I do in that domain. So I would hate to poo-poo anyone's attempts to come up with a good name. But to me, it felt perhaps a little broad. But the idea is obviously all about smart cities and kind of readying them for the very rapid pace of AI and technological innovation that we're seeing now. So yeah, I think this idea of crisis proofing was really big this year. Several panelists were kind of addressing, obviously you've got an increase of natural disasters, the wildfires in California, that was a big topic, floods, that kind
Sure.
of thing. But things like cybersecurity hacks and data breaches, they also serve a really big challenge to cities who are increasingly using technology to completely change their infrastructure and are becoming very dependent on technology. So big theme, I think, was how can cities be ready for potential mishaps as they continue to kind of innovate and develop. So yeah, it was interesting to hear from the different countries represented and what the different models were. I don't think
Did any particular cities get accolades?
they did indeed. Smart City Awards, the Oscars of the Smart City Expo World Congress. It went to Rome this year, which is the first time, to my knowledge, that Rome has won it. I had a quick chat.
Longtime contender, finally getting recognition. It's so nice for Rome after all these years.
No, yeah, exactly. It was interesting. I had a chat on the ground with some of the representatives from Rome, and they said they felt like the kicker this year was that they kind of changed the data set to incorporate women, people with special needs, people from older demographics. Obviously, Italy has a very rapidly aging population. They were talking about how so much data when it comes to like tech and infrastructure is just kind of created for the stereotypical male user, I guess for you, Jonah. So they were trying to make it kind of more inclusive, and
You're
that's,
being
I
very
think,
presumptuous about me.
very presumptuous. Listen, I see a man, I see certain things, but yeah, I mean, I think it was about kind of changing the smart city to fit the the inhabitant, which was pretty innovative from their side. So well deserved, I think.
A city for women too. I'm hearing this for the first time. This is
Shocking.
fascinating development. All right, so Rome allowing not just men to wander around the famous
Very
streets.
maverick.
And what about, are there particular themes, new findings about safety, like anything that can be then applied to other cities trying to up their game?
Yeah, well, as you'll remember from the last time we chatted, I had actually just come back from Munich as the jet setter that I am. And when I was there, I was covering kind of autonomous vehicle technology in Germany, and Formula One was a big discussion. They were very involved in that conference, and they were here again in Barcelona. I think increasingly Formula One is becoming quite relevant to new mobility because of their simulation technology. And there were a lot of startups, a lot of small companies at Smart City who were kind of exhibiting their simulation tech. A lot of them were from
Yeah.
Formula One. So I guess it's all about crash detection. And obviously now with so many driverless vehicles, I think the FIA or Formula One are kind of finding new applications to make the tech a bit safer.
It's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because on one hand, you think race cars, it's not exactly a model of safe driving behavior going, 300 miles per hour around the track. But yeah, then when they crash, they tend to have better outcomes because there's so much modeling and safety and roll cages, and you don't want these beautiful drivers dying in fiery infernos. So yeah, something to learn from the machine, but maybe not from the operators.
Well, exactly. I think, I guess it's going to be interesting to see where we start taking our tools from as the technology around driving just shifts so quickly. And as you say, I don't think anyone would have predicted that possibly one of the most dangerous sports in the world would be contributing to safety tech, but it does conversely kind of make sense. And it's,
Yeah.
it's all a question of psychology. And that was another big theme this year, the psychology of the driver. So I don't know how much of it will ring true to drivers in different countries, but a lot of studies were presented, a lot of research was presented about kind of what's keeping us behind the wheel. And a lot of that was to do with habit and the fear of a loss of habit.
Sure.
If a bus is 5 minutes late or a train's not running, you'll just go straight back to your car. So this idea of gently nudging people into different habits was also a big area of discussion, I think, this year.
Any suggestions on nudges that agencies can adopt?
Well, I think that's kind of the idea of combining like good infrastructure with gently changing behaviors. I guess if you're a daily commuter and your go-to is to just grab your car keys, I don't know, maybe hide your car keys somewhere less convenient to even out the playing field until it becomes normalized for you to take
Put
another
put your car
train.
keys on the bus.
I mean, I don't know if I'm the best person to offer advice, but there's definitely better research out there. That's just off the top of my head.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right that there is a psychological component. People are status quo biased. It's hard to make a shift, even if it's quote unquote good for us. But I'd say also would be nice if the train was on time, right? Like it's you don't want people to be worried when it's 5 minutes late, and so maybe you can nudge them. But you could also just make the train run on time. So
Yeah,
a little A, little B.
bit of both, collaboration and all that.
But speaking of running on time, I'm excited to talk to Stephen Hayes from Lyft. And we're back. I'm joined by Stephen Hayes, VP of Autonomous Fleets and Driver Operations for Lyft. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Jonah. Thanks for having me.
We got a lot to talk about, as your impressive title conveys. You've got a lot of different things you're working on, a busy man. And so I think, before we get into the nitty gritty of what you're working on, because it's pretty impressive, let's just do a little career background, for people working in the mobility space themselves. How'd you get here? What led you to the great mobility career you've got?
Yeah. I came out to California for school and thought I'd stick around for a year or two after graduating. I ended up in San Francisco working for a small startup that was in a different industry, digital publishing. And that was actually a really fun and kind of magical time in very early career, just getting started, finding your way. Eventually, the company pivoted into more of like a B2B software space, and I I also was dating my now wife at the time at this small company, and so it felt like it was a good time to take a break and do something else. And what drew me to mobility actually was the opportunity to work at Lyft after being in what ended up being enterprise software, where you are selling seats to software, and it didn't really feel like you were touching people's lives as much as we get to here at Lyft and across the mobility industry. It is a privilege to get to move millions of people safely and efficiently from point A to point B, and to always be looking for new and novel ways to do that at greater and greater scale. That's how I ended up in mobility and why I'm so thankful to be here.
Yeah, it is cool how mobility, it's not just software, right? It's not just a thing on your phone. It actually has real world implications. It can change lives for the better. So that's the first time hearing also the little spicy HR story you hidden.
It was all above board, but yeah, it got to be a little bit too much bringing work home with us, and so we decided to take a break and travel, and then we both started our respective companies 10 years ago.
Cool. And so autonomy, fleets, driver operations, you're working on a lot of stuff. What does that look like day to day?
So the primary focus of my organization is building out our fleets, which are, you can think of as like professional drivers and solutions to help drivers get access to a vehicle to earn on the platform. One of the key pillars of that, something that we have been working on for a very long time at Lyft, is what we call Flexdrive. So it's this flexible rental offering that today about 15,000 drivers use to get access to a car that they can use to earn on Lyft. And we came up with this concept very early on in my tenure at Lyft, when we noticed that there's a big opportunity to improve the efficiency of our funnel if we could help drivers get access to a car. We've also done that through partnerships with the likes of Hertz and Avis, but we really wanted to have this experience of our own in-house with managing fleets so that we could raise the bar for quality and consistency. And that today is the backbone of our fleets business. We operate in 25 markets, again, about 15,000 vehicles. And in the last year, as I've stepped into the autonomous role, a big part of that was the recognition that in order to commercialize autonomous vehicles, you need to be really, really good at driving high utilization of those
Hmm.
assets. And it's a core competency that we have between our technology, our physical infrastructure, and our people expertise that we're now bringing to bear into the world of autonomy. So combining the fleet management expertise with the mobility marketplace to help our partners in the autonomous space bring their vehicles and their technology to more people.
Sounds like you're keeping busy.
It's been a whirl. Yeah, Lyft has never been boring, and the last year and a half in particular, as the autonomous space has heated up dramatically, has been some of the most exciting and fulfilling time I've experienced in my last decade at the company.
And I will just throw out there, yeah, as you sort of said, it's interesting how it's become so much about, efficiency and utilization and making sure these, impressive, expensive assets aren't just ever going unused. Such a fascinating evolution. I remember dating myself here, but 15 years ago, John and Logan just like, oh, well, people can do a little bit of driving on the side. And I was in SF at the time working on a tour. And we're like, oh, people can rent out their cars when they're not using them, just like take it for an errand. And so watching all these mobility businesses sort of evolve from, oh, it's a part-time thing, just do it, when you need to sort of utilizing these expensive, intensive assets the most. And I think becoming more sustainable because of that, because it's not just sitting idle. It's been a fascinating evolution.
Yeah, I mean, just the professionalization of the gig economy has been really fascinating. Going from, I was probably one of the first couple hundred users of Lyft in San Francisco when it launched, because one of my friends was one of the first employees, and sitting in the front seat, fist bumping with the
Yeah,
driver,
yeah.
the big pink
Pink
mustache is
mustache.
on the front of the car. And now, I mean, millions of drivers a year earn with us, and that's incredible. And it also carries with it a huge amount of responsibility to connect those drivers and those riders quickly, efficiently, help them get to where they need to go, make sure that you do all of the little things that end up making an experience that both sides want to come back for.
From a big picture standpoint, how would you characterize Lyft's views on autonomy? Like, where do you see it headed? What's the role of autonomy in the greater sort of mobility marketplace?
We see it as a once in a generation opportunity for our business. I think it's important to remember that we are in the very, very early innings of this autonomous transition. It's interesting because you, Jonah, in LA and me being in San Francisco, AVs are part of the fabric of the city streets that we are on a daily basis. And so it feels very prevalent here. And where I grew up in Washington, D.C., you will rarely, if ever, see a vehicle on the
Sure.
road.
Yeah.
And that will
Still.
change over time. But then what about the market, like Tulsa or Springfield, Illinois? Like, when does autonomy reach the rest of the country? It will. It's just a matter of time. But we kind of are existing in this space where it is ever present in a handful but growing set of markets, and it is this promised future in the rest of the country and the world. So we're tremendously excited about AVs because we think they are going to help our marketplace operate more efficiently by adding another source of supply. And we think that marketplaces like Lyft are uniquely positioned to win an autonomous future because we can find the right ride for the right rider in the right vehicle. And some people might not be looking for an AV. Most people, in fact, are just looking to get to where they need to go as quickly and efficiently as we can. And so when we can serve that with an AV, fantastic. And when it makes sense to provide a human driver because it's going to an airport or outside of the operating domain of the autonomous vehicle, that's great too. And the other thing that makes us so excited about AVs is the fact that we have this homegrown deep expertise that we have really built through blood, sweat, and tears over the last decade around fleet management. Because as we talk to autonomous partners, most of them are focused on how do we accelerate our self-driving technology? And they have spent less time thinking about how optimizing the service and maintenance schedule or the tire rotation schedule.
The
I
less
know this is
sexy
very
stuff.
sexy stuff, Jonah, but when you're talking about, the 550 million miles that Flexdrive vehicles go on public roads in the United States each year, saving a penny or two from a cost per mile standpoint is actually incredibly meaningful. And so we're excited to partner with autonomous players to help them improve both the top line and the bottom line of their
Yeah.
fleet's performance.
You're almost jumping to my next question, but before that, I think to your point, yeah, the autonomy doesn't matter if you get in a car and it's dirty or the tires are flat or something. So there's so many unsung heroes of just keeping the machines rolling in good shape, and you can have the best routing and vision tech in the world, but if the car is sticky when you get in, I'm not
Yeah.
going. But yeah, to your point, Lyft has had a lot of different partners. You got the Waymos, you got the May Mobilities, just to name a couple. What's your view? How do all these different companies sort of fit in? What's the grand scheme?
The grand scheme is to partner with the best autonomous technologies in the world and bring them to the Lyft marketplace and help our partners succeed. There's really a whole ecosystem that is required to make autonomy work and commercialize it. And that spans from the developer of the AV stack. It goes to the OEMs, the car manufacturers, making sure that they are invested in building fully redundant vehicles, hopefully at production level scale so that you can start to achieve some economies of scale and bring price points down. It goes to fleet management, who's owning the asset. And then, of course, what most people associate with Lyft is the front end customer experience in the mobility marketplace. But it's really all of those pieces of the value chain coming together that's needed to bring AVs to the road in a commercially viable way. And so our partnerships will span that entire value chain. Last year, we announced a partnership with Marubeni, which is a Japanese trading house that is a company many people won't have heard of, but is one of the larger asset managers in the world. And they want to move into the asset ownership space for AVs, working with Waymo, obviously, next year in Nashville. That's a combination of fleet management through Flexdrive and pairing Waymo's marketplace with Lyft's marketplace and dispatching vehicles across both of them. So each partnership is going to have a slightly different flavor in terms of the focus and what we're building towards. But the key thing that we try to remember is we have to, again, stitch together that entire value chain in order to build something durable and meaningful.
And as these pilots have gotten off the ground, any unexpected lessons or sort of surprising things you've learned so far?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're in the super early days, but in September, we launched the pilot of our partnership with May Mobility in Atlanta. So today, Lyft riders in Midtown Atlanta can get paired with a May Mobility vehicle, depending on the route they're taking. And it's great to be doing those rides, collecting feedback, learning every day, kind of hardening our systems together as we mature the technology and the offering. So I think early takeaways are being thoughtful around which rider you pair with an autonomous vehicle. Things like rider willingness to walk, whether it's door to door, or if the AV needs to drop off a little bit further away. Some riders don't want to walk. Others
Sure.
are very happy to be new adopters of technology. And so giving riders choice, I think, is really, really important. And one of our takeaways, and again, is the value of this hybrid marketplace that we talk about with Lyft, of being able to have AV supply along human driver supply to provide optionality for everyone. Because I am excited every day to get into an autonomous vehicle. But I can tell you, my parents or my mom might be a little bit more skeptical, particularly if she's got luggage and she's coming from the airport, wants someone to help her with that. So
Sure.
being able to serve the needs of different riders with different products is super important to us.
Yeah, that's a good point. That grandma might not be the best customer, not necessarily because she's afraid of the tech, but just because that extra half block might be more burdensome to her than
Right.
to you or I. So good point. And so speaking of optionality, I think the $1 million sort of tricky question is, you've got the robots and you got the humans, and now in some sense they're competing for certain rides. How do you keep both players happy, right? How do you show them that this is not a zero-sum competition?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with uh, being candid and acknowledging that we are on the cusp of some big shifts that are bigger than Lyft, and frankly, are about mobility as a whole. And so, what we've sought to do is be very transparent with drivers that in the short term, we don't see any impact to drivers in any of the markets where we're spinning up operations. But of course, over the long term, as AVs come more to front and center, there could be. And our commitment to drivers is to be very transparent about that, to seek to create opportunity for drivers along the way. One of the interesting data points that I like to share is among our frontline Flexdrive team members. These are the folks who are performing hands-on fleet management, transacting rentals, providing customer service. About a third of them are former drivers themselves. And so, as you see this shift to autonomy, it is also going to create a lot of opportunity in areas like charging and fleet management. And our job is to kind of improve access. Also, keep in mind, AVs are quite expensive and are a pretty rare commodity today.
Yeah.
Our hope and expectation over time is that you, Jonah, would be able to buy a level 4 capable, personally owned vehicle. And when we get there, and I think it's when, not if, that will create enormous opportunities to democratize access to the earnings potential that AVs can provide. And so, in the same way that today we have many entrepreneurial drivers who own a number of vehicles and they deploy them to our platform, we foresee the same thing happening in the future, where you may own a small fleet of AVs and you may choose to monetize them on our platform. And we call that Lyft ready, where we want you to be able to purchase a vehicle that you
Yeah.
can drive off the lot and monetize it on Lyft, even if you're not in the driver's seat of that vehicle.
You made an interesting point about Flexdrive, about how a lot of the workers are former drivers themselves. Is that the secret sauce, the competitive advantage, the fact that you have staffers that actually understand, hey, make sure you check, under the middle seat console here, or hey, like, your tires are actually a little low for this, because they've been in the trenches themselves? Is that a differentiator, would you say?
I think if you talk to drivers in the FlexDrive program, they would have a lot of positive things to say about their experience on site working with our team members, many of whom come from backgrounds in driving on Lyft. But overall, our secret sauce with FlexDrive is absolutely with the technology that we have been investing and building over the last 10 years to manage and automate pretty much every part of the vehicle life cycle. When we got into
Wow.
this business of managing assets, we looked around and said, what are the tools that we can use to manage fleets efficiently? And we found that there really wasn't much on the market for our use case, which is very unique, very high mileage, and in my opinion, is the closest analog that exists to autonomous fleet management, given
Yeah,
again how many miles we put on these vehicles. And so we've been investing in building this technology, and it's the same technology that we are now bringing to bear in our autonomous partnerships to help our partners have access to the same capabilities.
makes a lot of sense. So, final question, putting on your thinking cap, your dreaming cap. It's the year 2030. What does the mobility landscape look like then?
In 2030, I think there will be a whole lot more proliferation of autonomous vehicles in certainly in top markets in the United States, but also increasingly globally. We see a lot of interest and emerging traction in Europe, for example, for AVs. And so, if today we are in a place where there are one or two players operating in the United States and Europe in a handful of cities. We think that there are going to be many dozens of cities that are meaningfully served by a portfolio of different AV technologies, and that is a future that is really exciting to us because it means that more people will have access to more safe means of getting from point A to point B. And again, Lyft from a marketplace and fleet management perspective, we think is very well positioned to help usher in that future into existence.
I look forward to it. Stephen, thank you so much.
Jonah, thank you. It was great to chat with you.